Hey folks, this is another video in a series that aspires to teach Google Apps Script's DriveApp to beginners. In previous lessons, we've learned how to access all the files in our Google Drive, how to access files from a folder, how to access files from subfolders, and how to move a single file. We're going to resume by navigating to the Files module, where we will be creating a new script file. We'll title it e_move_files. We'll hit enter. We'll be changing the name of our function to move files with a capital S, or with a plural S, capital F. We're going to save our project, and we'll begin on line 2. So we're going to learn how to move multiple files at once. We're going to begin by hitting enter, adding 2 slashes for a comment, and we will define the destination folder. I'm going to hit enter and tab. We're going to declare a variable called folder, capital D-E-S-T, which is short for destination. And we're going to set this equal to DriveApp.get capital F folder by ID. We're going to have an open parentheses. Get folder by ID takes a single argument, which needs to be structured as a string. So we're going to enter in single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't matter which, but you just want to remain uniform with whatever you've been using throughout your project to this point. We're going to go to Google Drive. I have a set of folders here. So I've been working out of a project folder. So I have this new folder. I have folder to delete. I have subfolder 1, subfolder 2, and subfolder 3. So I am going to open up folder to delete, and I am going to be adding some files here. So I am going to highlight the URL, and I am going to copy the ID. I'm going to paste it in between get folder by ID. So because this is our destination folder, this is the place that we want to move the files. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice. We're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit space. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to say where we want the files to go, just so that it's like abundantly clear that this is where we are sending files. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow on our keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we are going to access the folder with the files we want to move. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable of folder. And we're going to set that equal to DriveApp.getFolder by ID, and we're going to have an open parentheses, same exact thing as we just did. So we're going to enter in some quotation marks, whatever you've been using. And now we're going to pick a folder with some files that we want to move. So I'm going to pick subfolder 3, which has some stuff in here. And I just want to make a quick note. I'm not like, it doesn't, the name of my folder being like files to delete, we're not learning how to delete files in this. It's just the name that I have. It was the first folder that I had. So that's where I'm moving stuff. So I just don't want any confusion there. We are not deleting files. We are just going to be moving files from subfolder 3 into a new folder. It doesn't matter what it's called. So we're going to go to the URL. We're going to copy the folder ID, and we're going to paste it in between the parentheses in the get folder by ID function that is being used by the folder variable. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, add a semicolon, hit space, and just to make it clear, we're going to say where we are going to get the files to move. We are, you know what, let's remove to move because that's a little confusing, where we are going to get the files. So folder destination is where we want the files to go, and folder is where we are going to get the files. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we are going to collect the files from the folder variable. I'm going to hit enter and tab. We're going to declare a variable called files, and we're going to set that equal to folder.getFiles. We'll have an open parentheses. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to log out the files variable. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, and then we're going to just write files. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit run, and the result of this is going to be a file iterator. So if you've been following along or you have experience with the get files or the get folders or the get file or get the folder, all that type of functions, you'll return a file iterator. And that means that you need to loop through your variable in order to access each element of the iterator. So we're going to be needing to use a while loop to do so. And additionally, we are going to be creating an empty array so that we can store our data, because we have more than one file and we might want to construct some conditional logic on top of it. And by putting it into a two-dimensional array, we are providing ourselves the opportunity to do so. We're going to resume on line 13 by hitting enter twice and the left arrow on our keyboard 4 times. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to create an empty array to store file arrays. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to declare a variable called array, and we're going to set it equal to square brackets. We're not going to put anything in there because we are going to push arrays into this array so that we construct a two-dimensional array. We're going to add a semicolon after our last square bracket. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow on our keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and then we are going to start using our while loop to access our files. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do while, open parentheses, files dot has next, open parentheses, no argument will be passed in there. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, space, curly bracket. We're going to hit enter, 2 slashes for a comment. We are going to access the files through a file variable. So we hit enter and tab. We're going to declare a variable of file, which will be set to files.next, and we'll have an open parentheses. With the right arrow on our keyboard, add a semicolon, hit enter twice, left arrow on our keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to create an empty array to store file data. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to do var array capital F files. I'm going to set that equal to square bracket. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice, and then we are going to add 2 slashes for a comment where we will say push each file name, ID, and type to the file array. So we're going to hit enter and tab. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to go back to line 21. I'm going to hit enter once, 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to log out the file variable. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, and then we're just going to pass in file. We're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit save. So I just want you to see what's going on here. So the first thing that's going to pop up in our logs is going to be logger.log files. So that's going to give us the output from this files variable right here, which is going to result in a file iterator. That's why we've constructed this array variable as well as this while loop. So in order to access each element of the file iterator, we have to use while with has next on files. Then we're saving files.next as a file variable. Really, we're storing it as a file variable, and then we're going to log out each file. So once our file variable is logged, you're going to see each of the file names that exist in the folder that you are referencing in line 7 here. So for me, it'll be 3 file names, which I think are like hi, howdy, and something else. So the reason that we put this logger.log in here is for transparency, so that you can follow along and make sure that this is doing what you want it to do. And as long as you are returning the names of the files in your folder, then you can move forward with pushing the name, ID, and type into this file array, which will eventually be pushed into the var array, which will result in a two-dimensional array with data. So we're going to hit run. And you can see that I am getting file iterator, howdy, hi, and hello. And when I go back to my drive, you can see that I have hello, hi, howdy. So I have successfully accessed the subfolder 3 files, and I have successfully iterated through them so that I am individually accessing each of them. I'm going to resume on line 28, where I'm going to hit enter and tab. And I don't need some of this stuff up here, so I'm going to collapse it for now. This is the reason I like to add the comments, hit enter and tab, because then I have this little shelf that can be closed. So I have this nice little comment here that says define the destination folder. And then when I open it up, I have my folder destination ID. So it's just a nice way to organize your project. So I'm going to close line 3, line 6, line 9. And now we are just looking at what we need to, and we are going to resume on line 29, where we will type array files.push. We're going to have an open parentheses. We are going to be pushing data into this array, which means that it will sequentially go into our array. So because array files is empty, the first thing that we push in there is just going to exist in there. So it's going to be square bracket and then whatever we push in there. And in this case, we're going to be pushing in file because that's going to result as the file name appearing as the first value in our array files array. We're going to hit space, add a comment just so that we know name. We're going to hit enter and we're going to do array files.push, and then we're going to do file.get capital ID open parentheses. We're not going to pass anything in there. This is going to result in us extracting the ID associated with the file. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice. We're going to hit space. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment and say ID. We're going to hit enter, and we are going to add array files.push, open parentheses, file.get mime type. Oops, sorry, wrong thing. Get mime type, open parentheses. This is going to return whether it's a sheet, a doc, a deck, a form, a drawing, slide, whatever. It's just going to tell you what file type it is. That way, if you want to exclude a certain file or include a certain file, you have that data point to work with. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, hit space, 2 slashes for a comment, and we'll say type. We're going to hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to log out the array files. We're going to hit enter and tab. We'll do logger.log, open parentheses, array files. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we are going to use a semicolon. We're going to hit run to make sure that this is doing what we want it to do. So that first argument is coming from when we log out our files variable. We are then using our while loop in order to access each element of our file iterator, in this case, a file. And you can see that when we run the first loop, the first while loop, we return the howdy file. And then when we use array.push file, file.getID, file.get mime type, you can see that we are, and we log out the array files, we're getting an array that says howdy, our ID, and then the type. And the same thing happens for hi and hello. So we now have arrays for all of our files, right? So these arrays are created each time the while loop runs. So what we're going to do now is we're going to push the array files into the empty array on line 16. And that's going to result in an array of arrays, which is also known as a two-dimensional array. So we're going to resume on line 34. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboards once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then we are 5 times, 6 times. My apologies. So we're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard 6 times so that this shelf is lined up with this shelf, and we are going to push the array files variable into the array on line 16. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do array.push, open parentheses, array files. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we are going to use semicolon. We're going to hit the down arrow on our keyboard once, down arrow on our keyboard twice, And now we are outside of our for loop. So we're going to hit enter once, twice, left arrow on our keyboard twice, and now we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to log out the array variable. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, array. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit run. So now you can see that we have successfully created a two-dimensional array. And the way that we know this is a two-dimensional array is because we have 2 square brackets on the left side and 2 square brackets at the very end on the right side. And in between that, we have one-dimensional arrays that are comma separated. So you can see that howdy has an array, hi has an array, and hello has an array. So now we have successfully accessed all of the files that exist in our folder. And now we are going to be using those file IDs in order to move them to our folder destination. So that was the first thing that we defined on line 4, was the place that we want the files to go. So instead of us manually typing out, move this file here, move this file here, we are going to use a for loop to iterate through our array, our two-dimensional array. And we're going to be using the second element of each array in order to use the ID of the file to move it to the folder destination. So we're going to wrap up by going to line 42, hitting enter twice, left arrow on our keyboard twice, and now we will loop through the array variable on line 16. Then hit enter and tab. And I'm going to close up my while loop because we don't need it anymore. This way we have a nice clean environment to work in. And we're going to do for open parentheses I in array. We hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to hit space. We're going to use opening curly brackets. We're going to hit enter. And we are going to add 2 slashes for a comment where we will move the files using their ID. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we are going to start by typing in DriveApp.get file by ID, open parentheses. We're going to reference array square bracket I. This is going to access the first dimension of our two-dimensional array, which is the which is the array that you want to access. We're going to go to the right of that, and then the next thing that we're going to enter is the element of each array that we want to access. In this case, it is element 2. The reason that we are entering in 1 for the second element is because arrays are 0 indexed. So that means that the first array is 0 and the first element is 0. The second element is 2 and the third element is, the second element is 1 and the third element is 2. Let me just repeat that because I tripped up a little bit. Arrays are 0 indexed. The first element in your array is represented by 0. The second element is represented by a 1. And the third element is represented by a 2. So this array here is array 0. And then the next array is 1. And then the next array is 2. Same thing in here though. Hi is 0. ID is 1. Type is 2. So when we enter in I1 next to array using these square brackets, we are going to be dynamically iterating through all of the elements in the two-dimensional array. So we are going to access each array. So we're going to go 0, 1, 2. So this is going to populate this variable I. Well, when it runs the loop for the first time, it will be 0. When it runs the loop for a second time, it will be 1. When it runs the loop for a third time, it will be 2. So this number here is a variable and thus will change with each loop iteration. And then we're going to be accessing the second element, which means that we need to reference number 1 in a 0 index array. Cool. So we're going to go to the right of get file by ID .move to, and we'll have an open parentheses. And now we're going to pass in our folder dest variable from line 4. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter once. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to add some logging so that we have a little bit of feedback here. So we're going to say logger.log, open parentheses, single quote, the file. We'll add space, parentheses. We just want the, you know what, let's get the parentheses out of it. So we'll say the file, and then we're going to do space after file in between the single quote, and we'll do a plus symbol, and then we're going to reference array square bracket I, square bracket 0. We're going to go to the right, add a space, add a plus. Another set of single quotes, we'll do a space after that, was moved to the folder named, and then we'll do space. We'll go outside the single quote, we'll do a space and a plus, and we'll do a space, and then we'll do folder, capital D, DST, and we'll go to the right and we'll add a semicolon. So this is just kind of like a flourish. You really don't have to do it. And if you're getting an error, then don't worry about it. But I think logging is really important to have some transparency about what's happening. So basically what's going to happen is like this logging statement is going to reference the file name, which is the first element in our two-dimensional array, or in each array of our two-dimensional array. So we're going to say like the file hi was moved to the folder named whatever the folder is named, right? So we'll have that movement happening, and we will have some human readable feedback to provide us transparency into it. So we're going to save our function and hit run. And now you can see that we are getting some feedback in here where we are seeing that we have a file iterator, which we then access through our while loop. We then pushed each file with its corresponding data into an array, which was then pushed into our array variable on line 16 so that we had a two-dimensional array. And then our for loop provided us feedback that the file howdy was moved to the folder named folder to delete. The file hi was moved to the folder named folder to delete, and the file hello was moved to the folder named folder to delete. So we're going to go back to subfolder 3, and you can see it's empty. And when I go back to my directory here and select on folder to delete, you can see that hello, hi, and howdy now exist in the folder that I wanted to move them to.
I hope you found this video helpful. If you'd like to continue following along with this series, please check out the playlist linked in the description.